Hey there. Welcome back to the Do It With Intention podcast. I am your host, Mindy Totten, and I'm super stoked about today's episode. We're doing something a little bit different today. I'm joined today by Elsa Isaac, a fashion stylist. Wait, what are we talking about here? I am thrilled to bring you something a little bit different and to dive into an area that body workers in general really don't talk about that much. But before we jump in and before we introduce Elsa, I would love for you, Elsa, to tell us a little something that very few people know about you. This is how I start every episode, every interview episode, and then I'll share something too. So, what's something that very few people know about you?
Well, thank you for having me here, Mindy. I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you. This was okay. I think I'm gonna go with I was I was like, I'm gonna go with the fact that I had a different last name. When,
Okay.
so when we immigrated to Canada,
Hmm.
my our family last name was Berhe,
How
so
do you spell that?
Berhe,
Okay.
Berhe.
Okay.
And so the last name thing, we do it. I'm from Eritrea, which is an East African country above Ethiopia. And so last names are done a bit different. You take on your dad's first name
Oh,
is what your last name is. But because, I'm sure someone told my dad that everyone has to have the same last name. So he went with I think his grandfather. I don't know. I forget who Barhe is in our family line, but he then decided he didn't want that. He wanted his dad's last name. And so he changed it. He changed all of our last names. I think I was maybe 10 or something,
oh,
10,
okay.
11, and it became Isaac. So most people don't know that. Most people know me as Elsa Isaac. And I think it's like the perfect name,
It is a
Elsa.
perfect name. Yes. So wait, so you were old enough to know that this was happening. So one
Oh,
day your
yeah.
last name was this, and then the next day next day your last name is something different. And how
Yeah.
did you respond to it? You were fine or
I don't think I got it then. And I also was like, I think because it was easier to spell, I was like, all right, cool. Because I don't think you're just like, sounds good to me. I don't remember it being hard. I don't remember having, I'm sure I did like clumsily write Berhe, but a couple times when it should have been Isaac. But the fact in retrospect, when I think back, like I'm sure the paperwork was not fun to change all
right,
of them.
sure.
So he must have really meant a lot to him. So,
Wanted to do it. Oh, I
I
love
think
it.
it's destiny.
Well, mine that I'm going to share today. Well, first of all, Elsa, whenever I interview somebody, I share something. So I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, everybody knows everything about me.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna
I
say.
I had to ask my husband. I was like, okay, I've got an interview tomorrow. What is something? And so he reminded me of this. So it's
Mhm.
really two part. When I first graduated from college, I taught computer programs. I know. If you're listening on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, Elsa's face just gave a very shocked look.
Yeah.
Um, very few people know that part that I taught computer programs to adult learners. It was
Oh.
anyway. It's for a company called Data General that no longer exists.
Mhm.
But as part of that, the local radio station had this contest, this competition for a company. They called it like lunch at work or something like that, where once a month they had this competition, and whoever wrote the best, basically, plea for lunch got a catered lunch for their entire office. And he reminded me that I wrote this plea for our office and I ended it. And this is going to be trivia for you, Elsa, and anybody else listening. I'm curious to see if anybody will get this. I ended the plea with, "Help us, Obi-Wan. You're our only hope." Do you get
I
the
know.
reference?
I know it's Star Wars,
It
right?
is Star Wars.
Yes.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
impressed. And I was going to have listeners send me an email if they even remember that reference. But Star Wars, I don't know, at that point was 15 years old or something. And so
Yeah.
it didn't have the revival popularity that it has now. So it
Uh-huh.
was kind of an unusual way for me to end. Anyway, we
Did
got
you
the
win?
lunch. I was extremely popular in my office. And that is something that very few people know about me.
What? So
So,
was that like I have to ask, was that a career path you were interested in going
you know,
into?
I've always been a teacher. I've always been a teacher at heart. So right out of college, I was an English major in college, and my minor was communications. So right
Mhm.
out of college, I was basically like a lot of people out of college. Well, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And I got this job teaching. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I like teaching, so I'll do that. And then while I was there, I went back and got my master's degree in English and teaching English. So I taught for years and years. And then, well, everybody listening knows all of this, but then I got sick and my
Mm.
body wasn't responding to conventional Western medicine. And so I tried alternatives. And that's how I got into this work. So
Destiny.
teaching has always been is sort of the through line through all of
Yeah.
it. And I want to get in now to hear about you and my listeners. I probably are like, well, now who is this really nice person, Elsa Isaac, who changed had her last name changed when she was like 10 years old. So tell us about the work that you do and how you got started in that work.
Yeah, so I am a personal wardrobe stylist and I help women choose clothing that better aligns with who they are and how they want to show up in the world. And I did not know that I wanted to become a stylist because I didn't even know it existed. I knew that I wanted to be in fashion and, in my era, when if you're into clothes, then the logical career was fashion designer. And
Mhm.
so I knew this early on. I remember like having dolls and Barbies and wanting and having more interest in the clothes that came with them than necessarily like the dolls
Oh, I love it.
themselves.
Uh-huh.
And then I just kind of nurtured it. I don't think I just I feel great. I'm grateful for the fact that I never had to worry about like what am I going to do? Like what will I do when I get older? It was always there, and I think I nurtured it. So it was all kind of in just instinctual
Mm-hmm.
to nurture this thing. And I remember learning how to sew, I believe in junior high school. Obviously, we had a home ec class, which they don't teach anymore, right? I
I
don't think
know.
they
I
teach.
don't know if they do or not. I love sewing. I like
Me
the sewing machine is right behind my laptop here. I
I
love
gave
it.
mine up because we didn't have space, but I think I want to get one again because
Mhm.
I remember just experimenting, like
Mhm.
it was such a tangible thing to kind of do, a hobby to have. So I taught myself how to sew, but then we also had these classes that taught us how to use patterns and things like that.
Mhm.
And then I'm pretty sure this was in junior high school, where I entered a competition to design. It was a design competition. And I was like, but I don't know how to sketch. I need to learn how to sketch. So I took sketching classes,
Oh, wow.
I
So
did
this
all these.
really was like it within you from the beginning.
Yeah, it
Wow.
was. And then in high school, I had a fabulous, also, well, no, it was a fashion class. Miss Elaine Lutz, and she was eccentric and wild, like literally crazy hair, crazy makeup in the best way possible. And
Hmm.
I was like, whoa, she definitely beats to she definitely dances to the beat of her own drum.
Hmm.
And so that was so helpful for me to see the possibilities of what you could do with your wardrobe. Again,
Hmm.
didn't not knowing about a wardrobe stylist. So I applied to the only degree program for fashion in all of Canada, which was in Toronto. My parents tried really hard to steer
To
me
change your
towards,
mind.
oh yeah, immigrants, it's doctor, lawyer, something
Hmm.
something stable. And so after, years and years, they were just like, okay, she's clearly not changing her mind. And they relented. And I went to Toronto. And I think it was in my second year there in school. They didn't have a fashion styling program per se, but it was like fashion marketing or fashion design. So I branched off into fashion marketing.
Hmm.
And then I had a friend, I was working at a bank part-time, supporting myself through school. And a friend of mine who was in the music industry asked me one day to style this music video for an artist, also a friend of his, but also an artist at the label. And I was like, thank you for thinking of me. I don't know what that is, and I don't do
I was
that.
gonna say, if somebody asked me to style somebody, I'd be like, beg your pardon, what are we talking about? What is that? Okay.
That's what I did. I was like, I don't know what that is. And also, I'm in school. I'm in school. Like, he knows I'm in school. And he was like, "No, yeah, I know, but I feel like, I feel like you'd be good at it. We'll walk you through it." And he would not take no for an answer.
Okay.
And so I was like, "Okay, like, I don't know what to do." He won't let me say no. So I did it. He walked me through it. They handed me a credit card. And at first I thought it was just for the artist, right? Like the singer. And then they were like, "Oh, and the band."
Oh
I was like,
gosh.
"Okay." And the extra. So it was 12 people total.
Wow.
My first gig, video shoots are extremely long. I didn't know that either. And I remember the day of the shoot, you do fitting to see what each person is going to wear. So each person would come to me, I would dress them. They'd walk away. They would tell me they loved their outfit, but other people would come and tell me they loved their outfit. And I was like, is he telling them to come and tell me this? You know? And 14 hours later, he gave me a check and he said, "I knew you could do it. You killed it. Like you just did an amazing job." And I was like, and I think that was the first time I experienced being you're in a zone.
Oh, yeah.
Like nothing, like, in the shows and movies when everything else goes blurs and you're just
Mhm.
in your zone. I remember that was like the first time I felt that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm naturally good at this.
Mhm.
And that was the beginning. He ended up hiring me for several more jobs after that.
So that I think that's unusual that well, maybe not. I think it may be a bit unusual to know what you wanted to do from the very beginning, and maybe not exactly that job, but what you're drawn to. And I think that your story is so beautiful, Elsa, because you listened. I think so
Mhm,
many of us get guidance, we feel called to something, and we're afraid,
mhm,
we back off and we try the more conventional route. And most people who are massage or bodywork therapists have had that experience. Most folks who are studying have done something else and then eventually come back and say, okay, this was what I wanted to do all along. I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to learn how to do it, and then, like you said, experience that flow. Now, full disclosure, everyone, I have worked with Elsa as a stylist. And like, how did that come about? Right. I was like, oh, first of all, I'm the opposite of you in almost every way that you just described. Hate shopping, don't like clothes, no fashion sense, no nothing, nothing. But a mutual friend of ours, Teresa
yes.
Reed, shout out. I was talking with her, and she said, "Oh, I'm doing this thing with a stylist where I'm going to," and I was like, "What? What is it?" And so I found out more about you, and we had this experience together that was transformative for me, which I'll talk about in a bit. But what I really want to emphasize for everyone listening is working with Elsa was not about picking out clothes for me. It was about a much, much deeper experience of recognizing really who I am. And we talked a lot about how I had changed. Like,
Mhm.
I really just wanted to wear the same stuff I wore in high school because it worked then, and why not? And why change? So there was a lot of transformational work. And that's one reason I'm so excited to have you on the show today, because the work that massage and body work therapists do is transformational as well. And I think we tend to be facilitators for healing for other people and put ourselves last. And so I wanted to talk to you today about some ideas sort of beneath or deeper than, whatever. Do I want skinny jeans or do I want bell
Mhm.
bottoms or whatever? I wanted to talk about some deeper ideas. And I know that you have made a personal choice to go in this direction as well. So, you're stylist to the stars, to rock stars. That's something else that when I first was researching to see if I could work with you, I was like, she's not going to want to work with me. She's like styled Lenny Kravitz. And I'm like, Joe Blow, frumpy woman. But
No.
that is not how you work at all. So, how did you go from styling the rock stars to doing what you do today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think obviously because I got my start working with musicians and kind of camera ready type of projects. So whether it was album packaging, photo shoots for, press, that's what I knew. Remember, Style and I just met, being
Right.
a stylist, we had just met. And so I kind of just figured, well, let's just stick with what I know. And then I realized the industry in Toronto was not as big. Like I think it would have taken me longer to kind of build a career there. And so I ended up moving to New York in 2006, started from the bottom, started assisting stylists. And that at the time, at least I wasn't aware of a lot of personal stylists. I was, the stylists I was working with were doing a lot of magazine
Mm.
photo shoots,
Hmm.
commercials. So I call it the commercial industry is
Hmm.
what I call it. So working with models and musicians and hosts and actors and things like that. Celebrities essentially.
Hmm.
And uh, it was very exciting, but then I remember really quickly it wasn't exciting. And I was like, I didn't know what the misalignment was. I felt like, oh, I guess the styling thing has run its course, and now I have to figure out what I'm going to do next. And then I came across a coach who coached online, and I was like, I'd never heard of that, but I was just searching, right? I was like
Hmm.
looking for an answer of what do I do next? How do I And I also like celebrities, you're constantly on their schedule and their
Yeah.
timing.
Yeah, I
And I
bet.
knew that wasn't the lifestyle I wanted either. So
Hmm.
it was just misaligned. And I remember doing a photo shoot for I think it was Good Housekeeping magazine. And they were highlighting these three women who had just drastically lost weight, right? Undergone this weight loss transformation. They flew them in. They were from all over the country for this photo shoot. And I remember them walking in feeling so timid, so
Hmm.
shy, right? They're in this big city, in this huge studio with this like it's a lot.
Hmm.
And after each, phase of the transformation that a photo shoot involves, they like just started showing up differently. They started
Hmm.
walking taller. They started smiling. They were talking more confidently. By the time they were on set about to get, their photographs taken, they had a glass of champagne in their hand and they were dancing to the music playing. Like they were transformed. Like
Uh,
we literally saw their transformation. And I remember that just making a lasting impact on me. And then it wasn't until I worked with this coach, and I remember not telling anybody, my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, I didn't tell him, I didn't tell anybody that I spent all this money on this person I'd never met to get coached online, right? Like it sounded crazy to me, but I did it. And like that whole experience taught me I could do what I do differently. And
mm,
that's
mhm.
how, and just from being in that world, I started working with her and with several other women entrepreneurs and authors. And I was like, this, this is the impact I want to make. Women, we don't get enough um, inspiration that tells us we are allowed to show up authentically as who we are, but to kind of turn that dial up a little bit more. And it's hard. Like they don't make it easy. The fashion industry doesn't make it easy for us to navigate that world and figure out, well, how can I highlight the body I have?
Mhm.
Because the body I have is what matters.
Mhm.
How can I show up and communicate who I am to my audience or to the people meet who I meet every day in my day-to-day life? And I think we have swept that under the rug for so long because, life and bandwidth, and we've been distracted by so many things that I get that is life. But there comes a point, and I would love to hear your experience with this when that misalignment becomes too much. Like it just feels like you're not showing up as who you know you are on the inside.
Right.
And so we do all this work, all this self-development you know, to heal and elevate that inner version of ourselves. But for some reason, we just completely negate the outer appearance and toss it off as too it's too who cares about how I
Yeah,
look?
it's
It's superficial.
superficial. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I care about this, then I'm arrogant and I'm ego and I'm,
Yep.
I I think it's fascinating. I keep going back, of course, to the lens of body workers, which,
Mhm.
I was a hands-on body worker for whatever, 20 years or so. And else it would be like the last possible thing on my mind. I
Yep.
mean, it wasn't quite this bad, but it was basically like dive into my closet and whatever I come up with, that's what I'm going to wear to see my clients because it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. I'm
Yeah.
me and they should like me for me. And, all of these stories that I had told myself. Um, you mentioned, you get to a point where the inside doesn't match the outside anymore. And what does that feel like? And I know that many of you listening have either gotten to that point already or feel that approaching. And I think it can be many things. First of all, some people just have it, right? They love style, they love fashion, they've got it, and that's fantastic. I think the majority of women, certainly in North America, we're either waiting to dress our body when it looks a certain way, which often means losing a certain amount of weight, or, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, of course, as we age, we think about like, okay, what I wore when I was 30, it doesn't feel like me anymore. Like I'm not the same person. I'm certainly not the same person I see when I look in the mirror. So who am I now and how am I going to show up? I think that's a really courageous, brave thing to ask yourself. And as you said, let's just not ask it because life is going on and we are there for other people and we are doing things for other folks. But for me, what happened was I treated myself to working with you as a birthday gift for myself. And it was it was really difficult to do because it was difficult for me to, and when I say it was difficult to do, I don't mean working with you. I mean making the decision to work with you was difficult for me because, well, first of all, I shouldn't care about clothes, right? What difference does it make? It was difficult for me to admit that as a grown ass woman, I didn't know what to wear. Like I'm not,
But I have a rebuttal for that.
please.
Who taught you?
Nobody ever, nobody ever. Um, but you think you should just be able to do these things. And then the third part was the professional part, which you and I worked with a lot. Um, how do I want to look when I show up online, when I'm coaching people in calls? I don't just want to wear a t-shirt, but I don't want to wear a ball gown either. There were these things that I just couldn't quite wrap my head around. And what was so surprising for me in our work together, I mentioned this earlier, was, well, you start off by sending a questionnaire. I answer the questionnaire. I'm like, yeah, this won't be hard. It was so emotional for me. It was so deep for me. Just very simple questions like, how do you want to show up in the world? I was like, oh, I don't know. It was really eye-opening and a, a really interesting experience that if you had asked me before, I would have been like, I know exactly how I want to show up in the world, but I didn't. And so just having the clarity around some of these really life affirming questions that we don't take the time to ask ourselves or answer was really transformative. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show today, because I think that you can be helpful for people in the bodywork industry, helping us have these same sorts of transformations for ourselves. So you described the experience of working with the women who had lost a lot of weight and
Mhm.
seeing the transformation before your eyes. Can you describe a little bit more, like nuts and bolts? Like, what do you think is happening when we show up on the outside, having the outside match the inside? Like, what is happening? Like, what is that difference? You said that they had a glass of champagne and they were dancing.
Mhm.
Like, what's happening? Like, what is that?
I think we discount the fact that, our clothes have an energetic effect on ourselves, on our psyche, on our mental emotional state, like in the same way that body workers, you amazing healers, you guys are energy magicians. You're that if we looked at clothing in that light, I think And also let's look at history. Adornment has been a huge part of history all along, whether you belong to a church or a synagogue or, or a tribe. There are
Hmm.
still tribes in this world that there's no negotiation on what they're getting up and wearing because it's part of the community and
Hmm.
it's part of their identity. And we all want, like, I was told once by a um past life what was
Progression.
regret, yes.
Uh-huh.
She told me we all have this instinctual survival desire to belong to our community.
Hmm.
And so when we feel like that's at risk in any way, we are off. We are misaligned. That's where addictions and things like that come in. And when I think about it, like there's so many ways we can feel off, right? Like so what we're doing when we don't, and that's not a bad, like no one's at fault, right? Like if that hasn't been a focal point for you, because I don't think we've ever truly understood it or, kind of dove into it in a way to try and understand why it's so relevant. But no one understands that we're literally cutting off a part of ourselves
Hmm.
by not paying attention to that aspect of ourselves, because our inner selves is important, but so is our outer self.
Hmm.
That's how we communicate with, it's a safety thing.
Hmm.
Like we whether, it's not a judgment thing, but we we form an opinion about the people we see within 7 seconds of seeing them.
Is that right?
Yeah,
It's seven
seven
seconds.
seconds.
I mean, I know I'm big on first impressions. Like I put you into a category immediately when I meet you. And I would have said before we were talking today, I would have said, I base that on who you are as a person, not what you're wearing. But that can't possibly be. I can't ignore what they're
That
wearing.
Yes, it's part of the information, the data that you're taking in, right?
Hmm.
So if you're not intentional about that, then people are disinterpreting whatever they want based on, their own perception of life and people and all the things. So I think it is such a what happened to these women is they not only energetically did the clothes shift how they feel about themselves, which then obviously get is how others are perceiving them
Hmm.
right away, because that's what we feel when we meet other people. You know how sometimes you vibe with certain people,
Right. Yeah.
you don't vibe. Like that is all a part of connecting and communicating.
Uh-huh.
And so there was that aspect to it, but also they saw themselves in a way that they couldn't see themselves. Because when you are trying to, and you mentioned this earlier, some people are good at it naturally, but for the vast majority, and it's easier for me to style you than it is to style myself, right?
Is
Like
it
to,
really?
yeah, because I have to somehow let go of the versions of myself that I'm familiar with,
Oh.
right? Because then I'm boxing myself in to the parameters of the things I only know, right? I hang on to those. I remember when I was in college and I had, the body that my
Mhm.
ideal body, and I was, I remember these jeans that I loved, and so anything that doesn't look like those jeans, I won't give a chance, really.
Or, I was thinking as you're speaking, I think this is really wise what you're saying. I was thinking of we put ourselves into these boxes too. I will speak for myself. I won't project.
Mhm.
I put myself into these boxes where I'm like, oh, I could never wear that.
Yes.
I could never
Yes.
get away with that. And that you helped me with several things. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I can wear that. So we do have these narratives that we weave about who we are and how we show up in the world, what we look like in the world. And then by having somebody else perhaps like shake things up a little bit, shake the snow globe,
Yep.
then we can think of ourselves and actually not even think of ourselves, really truly, as you're saying, perceive ourselves in a new way, perceive ourselves in a
Yes.
new light.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes, we change. I think we really do change frequently in our lives,
Mhm.
whether it's right out of college into career mode, and then family as, let's say you're a mother or caregiver, and then, when your children have grown up, like all these phases of life that we navigate.
Mhm.
really does have us seeking. That's women come to me often when there's a shift happening in their
Right,
life.
right.
And it's because they're like, oh, well, who they're getting to know themselves. And at
Hmm.
some point they realize, oh, I haven't really explored this version of myself that can play with adornment and not see it as a utilitarian thing, but as an extension of showcasing the person that they are and the journey that they've been on and what they stand for and what they believe and all of these things that make up our internal being is can be showcased in a way that is in alignment with that, you know? And I just think it's a tool that can really empower us in a way that nothing else can.
Hmm.
And it's a shift, not a complicated shift, but it's a shift that is so helpful when someone like a stylist, an experienced stylist who can see that for you,
Hmm.
it just fast tracks the process so much more than you trying to experiment on your own. Not that you shouldn't, you should,
Right,
but that is the beauty of working with a stylist.
right, right. Well, I have so many things that I've said. Okay,
Yeah.
so one is I'm thinking in particular, making the shift with the people who I mentor and coach. A lot of them are making the shift from working for someone else to wanting to pivot and open their own solo practice. And that's huge. That's a like major life shift. And I was thinking about what I wore like when I worked at the spa as opposed to what I wear now. Like it is it's almost a demarcation, isn't it? It is a way of saying that part, that was the old, and now this is the new. This is how I want to show up in the world. And another thing I was thinking of is you talked about the clothing. I think you used the word adornment, which is lovely. The adornment is energetic. And I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, of course it is. Of course it is. Like it's all energy, right? We all know that it's all energy. But I think that's a really key phrase, Elsa. Like it's energetic. It affects our energy as well. And I was thinking about when I've worn everything probably when I showed up for work as a body worker, but sometimes it would just be like a little t-shirt or something. And sometimes it would be a short sleeve shirt that was really nice that, well, you help me a lot too. Buying pieces that will last a really long time that are of better quality than just getting, whatever, the things that last for a couple of weeks. And that it's a different energy when you have a top that's nice. And when I mean nice, I mean it's just well made and the
Good
materials that go
quality.
into it are quality. That has got to be a tactile. I mean, you can feel it,
Yep.
and we body workers are very good at, that tactile feeling, but it is also energetic shift as well. That, of
Yeah.
course, affects our energy. And then this is the thing I'm really curious about how when we show up in a certain way. So let's say we've got the really cool thing on, we feel good, we feel confident, it feels good on our skin, that affects our energy and how we show up for the client who comes in. And I'm thinking that could help the client get better results from the work together.
Yes.
Am I
Yeah.
am I too far out on a limb, do you think?
No, I think that that's when we talk about like, why are we so drawn to certain celebrities, right? I'll use Taylor Swift because she's a big one, and I mean, I don't even know what her reach is, but it's pretty wide and big. And I think about like there's no negotiation about her investing in a stylist and clothing. And when she's on stage performing, the audience feeds off her, she
Mhm,
feeds off the audience,
mhm.
and everything. We are visual creatures, so all of that comes into play. What she's wearing, like even Beyonce, I went to her concert last
Oh,
summer,
how
and I
fun.
was enthralled because I lost count of how many times she changed her wardrobe.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it was just kind of like, oh, what is she going to come out and for the next set? And she'd come
Yeah.
out and we were all mesmerized. Right. So that added to the experience. It was like I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about it because it was like we were a part of it. We were a part of
Uh-huh.
the experience, and that added to the memory
Uh-huh.
of, what happened that night and
Uh-huh.
in every city thereafter, I'm sure, and before. And so I think when we were talking about energy, if we see it in that way, I think your clients have instant trust,
Mm.
right? They build that sooner.
Mhm.
And if you're confident, you are radiating confidence, they feel confident in your ability to heal them or do whatever. There's just this ease of I don't know, symbiosis of working together, right? So I think that, yeah, if you have trust and you're confident and comfortable with the person that's working on you, how do you not
Mhm.
get results faster?
Okay. Okay. So now we need your professional advice. We're going to ground it a little bit more. We're going to come down from Beyonce and Taylor Swift because, of course, most of us can't afford. Well,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say can't afford. We choose not to put that in our budget at that
Hmm.
level, right?
Hmm.
But I think that I know from our work together that there are things that we can do. So, in general, and I would love to for everyone listening, if I'm off, if I'm wrong, send me an email, hello@mindytotten.com, and let me know. But in my experience, body workers either wear scrubs, if you're more on the medical side, or like yoga pants and a yoga top, if you're more on the non-medical side, spa
Right.
side, let's call it. I'm hoping that there can be more than just those two choices. And I was wondering about this whole notion of a uniform. So
Hmm.
not a uniform per se, like a
Right.
little whatever, a little, what are those called? Just a little crew polo shirt with like a,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
not that with pants, but I like the idea of a uniform because I don't like to spend forever putting outfits together and
Yeah.
stuff. I like, okay, this looks good on me. Let me get it in a couple colors. I feel good in it. Do you think that is reasonable, or is that, I would love to hear your ideas
Yeah.
around a uniform.
I do think that you can scale down the type of garments you feel most confident and comfortable in and feel most like you.
Mhm.
But I think I would say that the mindset shift that has to happen there is that you won't always get to that end goal right off the bat,
Hmm.
right? As I'm sure you can probably speak to, we had one session together, but I think having the experience of wearing the clothes over time, you
Mhm.
have refreshed data of what you would do next to add to
Mhm.
that wardrobe, right? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of experimentation that needs to happen, which is good,
Mhm.
right? Like you can't, um, with anything when you're first starting, you have to play. And that's one of the things that we don't often do with our clothes. We're often getting dressed 5, 10 minutes before we need to. And that limits our creative play as it relates to our clothing.
Yeah.
And so obviously trying to maybe play in your closet on weekends or whenever it is that you have more time when you don't need to get to be somewhere
Mhm.
is one aspect of that, but also like do you do better in dresses? Do you do better in leggings? Let's say you want to do leggings. There are a bajillion options of
Mhm.
leggings out there. Do you want to be more bold? And in addition to the questionnaire, I had you also complete a Pinterest board exercise because oftentimes we may not fit in these categories that we often hear as it relates to our clothing. Are you classic? Are you edgy? Are you bohemian? Right?
Bohemian. I was going to say that they always say that one.
Yeah, and you may not fit into that, right? So having my clients take a few minutes each day, not long, on Pinterest and just digging for images that really speak to your inner being and in this moment, right? Like who you are
Mhm.
now and like lights you up and excites you. And it doesn't mean that you want to replicate the outfit or garment, whatever it is that excites you. Uh, completely. But what it does is once you have enough images pinned, I always ask my clients to name it your inspiration board, right?
Mhm.
These inspiration board, style inspiration board. But it also, you'll start to see patterns develop. So maybe you're more into separates. right?
Mm-hmm.
Skirts, pants, tops, blazers, jackets, etc. Maybe you're more into dresses, right? So that's the beginning. That's where you start to see, what am I into right now? What's really what excites me?
Mm-hmm.
Because that could be your reference. That's how you start playing then, right? So when you're like standing in a store going, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Like there's too many options here. You start there. You start with your Pinterest board and go, okay, I realize I don't like a lot of patterns. So let me look for the solid
Mm-hmm.
colored items. It could be, I don't like a lot of, um, like I have clients who, get warm quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to layer more and not
Mm-hmm.
have like thick sweaters. So knowing all these nuances that are great, you should like it's great that you have these preferences. They all inform the type of clothing choices to look for. But I think it really has to do with you can, even if you were, let's say scrubs was your thing,
Mm-hmm.
you can mix and match colors. You can do like color blocking, or maybe you can customize it with tailoring. We talked about that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you make this uniform, right?
Mm-hmm.
More you. How
Right.
can you create a signature that feels uh different maybe and maybe exciting to you and just really ups that energetic vibration for you, maybe two or three notches than
Yeah.
what you're used to.
Yeah. Oh man, you've given me so much to think about again, and we've already worked together. I know I was listening to an episode on your podcast. What's the name of your podcast again?
It's called Get Styled. Get
And
Styled Podcast.
we'll put that into the show notes. That's at mindytotten.com/podcast and then the episode number. I was listening to the episode about a capsule wardrobe, and you were saying some of the very same things. And I was cracking up as I was listening to it because we all think that. Like I go through and I see something on, this is the spring 2025 fashion capsule wardrobe. And I'm like, okay, all I have to do is buy those things and they'll all go
Yeah.
together. And you're like, hold on a second. Because it always ends up being for me like a wah wah when I do that because I don't look good in those things necessarily. I don't feel confident in those things. And in your episode, you were talking about data points, which I thought was really great too, because I love your creativity side. And then also, well, let's get the information too. Let's get some data here so that we can make this work. But you were saying the same sort of thing. Like it doesn't just come tomorrow, a capsule wardrobe or a uniform. You need to take the time to see, again, asking ourselves these questions. Who are we? And how do we want to show up in the world? Who am I now? At this stage, wherever you are in your body work journey,
Yep.
who am I now? And how do I want to show up in the world? And of course, you're going to show up with integrity and you're going to show up authentically. And a piece of that I have learned is this how you show up on the outside as well. So you have taught me so much, Elsa. I really, really appreciate you coming on today. And for people who are listening and are like I used to be, which is like, I don't really care about what I'm wearing.
Hmm.
I think I sort of did it in an arrogant way, Elsa. Like I have more important things to worry about
Yeah.
than what I'm wearing. But then I recognize, that may be so. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now.
Yep.
But having clothes that suit me and that, as you said, make the outside a match to the inside, that can be super grounding, I have
Yep.
found.
That's a good word.
Super, like it just, I know then that all of this life is swirling around me. But here's one thing that I can have a little bit of control over, that I can choose. I can make my own choices and I can feel present, right? I feel
Yep.
grounded. I feel present. And then I show up in the world in a different way, as you said. And I just think the work that you do is fascinating. I still continue to get deeper and deeper layers and levels of understanding around it. Um, and I hope that if you're listening out there and you're thinking, oh, this is something that I could never do, I think that you can start off with baby steps, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to hire a stylist tomorrow to be able
Nope.
to make any changes. So as we're wrapping up here, could you give us maybe one or two ideas of like a baby step, like a small starting point? Because my Virgo self would go in and throw my entire closet away, right? And then, okay, here we go. That's not
Yeah.
a good idea, right?
No, and I mean, one of this whole, what I've built, I think, what I've created with, since working with, women professionals and entrepreneurs is I've always, I wanted to give women something tangible, right, to follow. And so it's really just the same steps that you experienced,
Mhm.
but you can do this on your own. So the first thing in your questionnaire, one of the first things I ask is your body shape, right? What's your body shape? So I have a body shape calculator on my website. I will send you the link,
Yeah,
Mindy.
we'll
So you
put
can,
that in the show notes. Yeah.
and so knowing that you do need the soft tape measure, not the construction ones.
Right.
But knowing your body shape is important
Mhm.
because data. You can't dress a body you don't know the nuances of, right?
Okay.
And so entering your 4 measurements into that body shape calculator, you'll get a result and you'll get a corresponding guide
Mhm.
that tells you kind of what details to look for the most flattering clothes for your body shape. So that's filter question number 1. What's my body shape? And which means when you have something on, does this garment suit my body shape?
Mhm.
The second thing is to create that Pinterest board, that your style inspiration board. And then that becomes filter question number 2, which is this garment in the direction of what I have pinned here?
Okay.
Does it excite me in the same way? And then the third question is, I asked you in the questionnaire to come up with 3 words that describe how you want your clothes to make you feel,
Oh man,
right?
I can't remember
So,
what I said.
oh, I wish I had.
No,
I'm gonna
I wish you
Are
don't.
we?
Maybe sharing too
You
much.
might
I
have
don't know.
outgrown it. You might have
Right?
outgrown it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So 3 words that describe how you want your clothes to make you feel. You can start off with a long list, of just throw words on a piece of paper and then narrow it down to your top 3.
Mhm.
And then this becomes your third filter question, which means when you have that same, so if you've answered, yes, this garment suits my body shape. Yes, this garment is in alignment with the style direction I have
Mhm.
on my style inspiration board. Then you move on to the question 3, which is, does it make me feel at least 2
Oh
of my
wow.
3 describing words,
Okay.
right? So you don't even have to do that with new clothing. You can go into your closet today and try on all the garments that you have in there and 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 create, you know, uh, basically kind of a filter, a closet cleanse, so to
Mhm.
speak, of just what you have, and you'll eliminate the pieces that no longer fit into who you are today, where your body is today,
Mhm.
and how you want to show up in the world today.
Mhm.
So that's no money. That's free.
Right. I love it. I'm right now. I'm like, okay, I have to go, Elsa, because I have to go do my closet. Um, But I wanted to highlight one thing that you said on that first filter question that I think is so important and so critical. And I love the way that you handle this compared to how a lot of society handles it, which is the first question was about what is my body type and does this garment suit my body type? Not, am I too fat for this? Do I look terrible in this? Does the garment fit me rather than is it about how bad I am or how the size that I am or the wrinkles that I have? Does the garment suit me? And I think that's so empowering for women because we don't get that message very often.
Yes, I'm so glad you highlighted this because that's where the empowerment piece comes in. Because, okay, let's say the garment doesn't fit you, doesn't suit your body shape, right? If there's enough, factors in the garment that make you love it, can you alter that garment to make
Mm,
it fit your body?
mhm,
Because if we consider the fact that these designers don't know you, don't truly care about your body shape, they really are just trying to sell a silhouette
right.
and they hope it fits as many different body shapes as possible because it is a business.
Mhm.
If we think about it from that perspective, then you don't take it personally, because how can they possibly know, right? How can they there's too many nuances within a body, especially the female body. I think we all have so many different beautiful proportions, and like there's just too much to
Mhm.
consider. And so let's take the power back, and let's figure out if there's a way to, and honestly, then it becomes a custom fit garment
Yeah.
that's cheaper than getting something custom made,
Mhm.
right? And so I think if, and I say not all, but I will say men are very matter of fact about their tailoring needs. They don't take it personal. They're just like, oh, this
Right.
is too long. Let's go get, like, it's very logical. And so if we think about it in that way, it opens up the possibilities of just in our closet. What can
Mhm.
we create? How can we reconfigure this garment to suit our body and our needs? Button down tops. I'll give you this as example, and we can wrap up if I know we could probably go on forever, but button down tops don't always fit women because of the gapping that
Right.
happens.
Yeah.
And I always say size up so you can
Mhm.
tailor down and then put hook and eyes in between the buttons where
Mm.
there's the most gapping. These are really simple
Smart.
tailoring,
Smart.
strategies.
Yeah.
So I think just exploring tailoring too is a huge, huge empowerment piece.
Yeah. Thank you. I really loved what you said there at the end. What can we create? And I
Mhm.
think that is a question for all of us as we wrap up here today. Like, what do I want to create? What do I want my business to look like?
Mhm.
How do I want to show up in that business? What do I want the energy to be? How do I want my confidence? How am I going to allow the outside to reflect the beauty of what's on the inside? And
Yeah.
Elsa Isaac, you have helped us so, so much today. If people want to get in touch with you to learn more, I know they can. What's the website, the
It's
URL?
elsaisaac.com.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty much Elsa Isaac on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Okay.
Uh, so
And
yeah,
it's,
the website is probably the most rich of content, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah, it's got some great stuff on there. And it's
Mhm.
ELSAISAAC.
Yep,
Yeah.
got it.
And we'll have all of those notes, as I said, I mean, all of those links in the show notes. So you can find them all there. Elsa, thank you so much. As you said, I feel like we should just go out to lunch and have a couple of
Yeah.
cocktails and just continue to solve the world's problems through this lens of how women show up empowered in their lives. Thank you so, so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mindy. This was so much fun.
I really loved it. Thank you.